Right, so we got to this point and we'd done that corner and put fillets all the way around here. So I think it's time to look at the whole front area again, see what else needs doing. So one of the things I know we need to do is this bit down here. So we've got these little details down here that I want to add in. And the other thing that we haven't quite got in yet is we haven't done all of the detail. So there's some fillets. If I shade that up, there's a fillet along that edge that we haven't got in, and there's also one along here where it's sharp and it washes out. So we'll look at those to start with. Now the first thing that I want to do, as always, I'm going to go and check what's around these areas. So this one here, I know this should wash out to here, and then gradually we get a crease in it and then it washes out again. So I do need to check that that's what's going on. And also I want to make sure before we put the fillets in that everything's curvature matched around it. So I'm going to look at this one first. And so let's have a look at the G1 continuity. And what you'll notice on this menu is that if you, I mean, it happened to me that it was opened up like that, and it looks like there's nothing else in that menu. I want to look at tangency along this edge because I want to make sure that it actually grows and then drops down, that we don't have any funny lumps in it or anything, or that the tangency is going the wrong way. I don't think we have got any of that, but so I'm just going to turn my phone off. I just want to make sure. So I want to put G1 continuity on it. And what we've done before, I've gone into this menu and pressed go, and then you do this, and you can see, those happening there. Actually, that is not what I wanted to show you. Let's just delete that lot. So if I go into here, and I didn't realize that there's a bit of more of a menu down here. And I had auto scale on. So if I go, so this is what my menu looked like. And if you don't realize, you go into there and you click on there and you can see the scaling on each of those is different. So it's very difficult to compare. This one's going up, and obviously, we've got continuity around there. So why is the angle suddenly going from this size to this size? And it's just because of the scaling. So if I go into the locators there and pick those two, and look at the scaling of those, we'll see that the scaling is very different. So that one says 20, and you could go around and edit that. You could make that the other one 20 as well, but this one's 60. So I'd have to make that, it was about 18 actually. I'd have to make those all the same. I'd have to go through and edit them all. It's a rather long-winded way of doing it. So rather than doing that, delete that lot. A better way to do it is if I go into there and I open up this menu, which isn't obvious, you find there's auto scale there, or you can drag and open it up that way. So if I take auto scale off, now we've got a scale factor in there. So first of all, we wanted to find out, what's a good scale. So I discovered that 20 is a good scale for this particular area. So this means we'll get a consistent scale on all of these edges now. So it's much easier to compare those edges. I can pick the edge, and there's a bit down there as well. And so you can see that, we've got what I wanted to see, which is that the tangency gradually increases from 0 down here and gradually increases and then drops back down to more or less 0. But there is a tiny little angle there. It's 0.12, and that's so small that it's pointless really having to put a fillet across there. We should actually make this surface in here aligned into that edge, I think, because it's so small. So if we align this and then we just start the tangent break from this point, that would make much more sense. And then we don't have to bother with a fillet down there. There's every chance that if I do increase that scale there, actually, that we'll probably find, if I'm putting a much higher scale here, so let's make that 200. Yeah, we find that that's actually going the wrong way. So in fact, it's not even going the same way as this. So it's actually wrong, although it's it's a very small angle, but it's best to eliminate it completely. And the way to do that is really to get these to align properly. And so they're not quite aligned around here. So let's do that. Don't need those CVs, to be honest. So what I need to do is find out what else is going on around here. Let's go into surface continuity G2, and we just check what the continuity is. So these are all curvature aligned here. And so what I want to do is actually align that in curvature on that edge as well. So let's try that. Object edit, align, and we're going to go into G2 and on that edge there. So because it's an edge, a trimmed edge there, we want position influence of 0, which is what we've got. We've kept the curvature on these three edges, so that's fine. This one's inevitably broken, but in fact the break is only 0.05 in terms of position, so not much, very much. And I was expecting that because obviously we've fixed that tangency there. So let's now try and align this one into here. Now this one is going to be, it's an edge to another edge of a surface, so we should make that position influence of 1, so the CVs all join up, and inevitably we open up a little gap there, 0.009 and 0.001. Now on these edges, this one we can only align it in position, that's all we want. It's so small, we could say it doesn't really matter, it's 0.00104. It's crazy really to even think about fixing it, to be honest. It doesn't really matter, but I will try and fix that. So we'll make that position influence of 0, so it doesn't move the CVs around. So it's position matched, position aligned. If we put G1 on, we'll see that display back again. Unfortunately, it doesn't come up with the scale, so we'd have to go into the information window and just change that scale to 20, so it's consistent, so we can see the flow of tangency across there. And then we want to fix this one. So this one, because it's so small, I would just start off with G0 and see if that will fix it. So let's make that G0. It doesn't, and it's not even position aligned. So let's just try changing the position influence and see if that helps. So that's fixed that. It's also fixed that. Let's go into G2. It's all done. That's great. So when it's a very, very small position error, we can often get away with that. I've had to put the position influence up to 1, which has moved the CVs left to right a bit, but not that we'd notice. It's so small that we can't see it. There's no problem there, so that's great. So let's take all our, well, before we do that, actually, I should just, everything around here, we just want to make sure that we've got G2 continuity on, and which I'm pretty certain that we have. I certainly hope so anyway. It's that one there as well. Before we bother putting fillets on, there's a waste of time if we, and that one, there isn't one there actually. So that's great. So let's get rid of all the locators, and then we'll just save the model. And then we can take all of the control points off. That's when I go up to there in control, I've just got, obviously you can set this differently. I've just got scope with everything off. So when I pick it, it just comes up with this. But obviously you've got other options in there about, you know, when you create a new surface, for example, you can say that you want the CVs and the holes on, which is good practice really, because you've always want to be looking at the CVs. So it's good to have those appear when you create a new surface. And then you've got other options in there about what you want to happen when you pick things. But I've always got that set to all with nothing on, so it just takes all the CVs away. Right, let's go and do this one then. There's probably not much need to look at the mesh as such. We can make our own decisions about the sections, but we'll have a look at what that looks like on the. It's actually quite a big fillet actually that is on the mesh by the looks of things. We're slightly different to the mesh in this area. I mean, it's very, very soft there, in fact. So maybe it is worth looking at this. Yeah, so I mean, it's not in the same. It's not exactly in the same place, of course. The mesh and the surfaces, so difficult to say. But that's quite a big fillet, certainly bigger than these ones. So what I would do there is where we've got a very strong break in the tangency, I would put some fillets in there. Where it diminishes to zero, then it's going to be we might have to do some manual work on that. But let's go and do that. So we're going to go into here. We want G2 continuity on our fillets, and we want to specify chordal length. I don't know why this is. I must have been doing something else. This is reset it. Tangent length means it's in when we build this fillet. If you put tangent length in, whatever that tangent length is the distance from this intersect to the edge of the fillet, which usually I don't work with. I usually put chordal length in, which then means it's the distance from one edge of the fillet to the other edge. And there is definitely this value is far too small. Let's make it 40 mil, and the form factor I usually have as 1. That's I'll show you what effect that has in a second. But explicit control off. So I'm putting default on. It's because I opened somebody else's model recently, so it's reset everything to be completely different. I'm going to put continuity check on, auto update, and let's just try this one. And so we're going to pick that. Oh, it says building fillet surface. I haven't actually picked anything as far as I know. Maybe it's just lying to me. That one and that one. And you can see the normal of that one is around the wrong way. So if I try and build it, nothing happens. So I've got to flick that around the other way. And now nothing happens either. So I wonder if the chordal distance is too big. It may be falling off the end. I'm just guessing what that value would be. If you find that that's the case, that nothing's happening, just put in a very small value instead, and it should work. Hopefully. This is very odd. I'll take the variable fillets off. That shouldn't really make any difference. Okay, so it's the variable fillets it didn't like. Variable fillets, which it won't let me pick, should allow you to go to the ends, and there should be a display that allows you to change that distance. But usually that's absolutely fine. So I don't know why that's misbehaving itself. So obviously the chordal length of 5 is too small. That's a very small fillet. Let's make that 30. See what happens. Because I've got auto update on, it will update. So that looks more like the sort of size that we've got on the mesh, I would say. That sort of size. Well worth putting history on here, because I'm sort of roughing this in at the minute, and I might change my mind about what the values are. So I'm just going to put edge align on both ends, so that it joins up completely, and then we'll get these surfaces trimmed back automatically, because I've got automatic on. We have to be careful when we got automatic on. These choices, what you put on there, of course. And now it's a bit difficult to see this, so I'm going to take the sections off. Coming up here, I would go back into. So if we click on next first, otherwise it will apply to that fillet there. If I put default, and we do that one, and see what that does. So on this one, we want this end to be edge align. This one can stay as it is, and because I've got automatic on, it's actually chopping that surface back, which is fine. This one is really odd, because if you look at that, it doesn't join up with this, which is very strange. Some strange things going on this morning. That is very peculiar. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to actually take the trimming off completely. Was not expecting that, I have to say. Let's just undo that one, and I'll do that again, but I'm going to pick that surface as well. I might as well pick these as well, actually. and just see what happens. I'm not going to pick that one because that's the one where we've got no angle between the two, so we wouldn't expect that to give us a fillet, and it might actually not like this end either. Also, I've left edge align on, so it's messed up this end. It really doesn't like this bit, because that one, when I did, if I do, that's end there. Now I suspect it's what this is all to do with is the fact that these angles are quite small. Although that one I thought was quite a reasonably large angle. The fact that it's messed up doesn't really matter because I've got history on, which is good. So let's have a look at that angle. There's 29 there. I don't think I don't think it's a minimum value. Yeah, so there's no minimum option with tangency, unfortunately. But that's certainly a big angle. It's 20 degrees or something. But because of the curvature of these surfaces, sometimes these sort of things happen, and I'm a little bit surprised that is so far different. I mean, that one's just messing up completely. If I query edit that, which is great, having the history on there, I can just undo the whole lot rather than having to delete everything. So I'm just going to see what happens if I pick, say, that one and that one. That's sort of more as I'd expect, because it's equally spaced around that intersect there, and it's more like what I want to happen, really. If I put edge align on there, that's going to not give us not going to be a great result. I don't think it's going to be so skewed that I'd probably want to avoid that, and we don't want to extend on either. In fact, I'm going to undo all of that lot. I'm just going to see if I can pick that. This is another time where the normals have gone around the other way now, and we don't want edge line on there, so let's just do default, because it gets to the point where it just crashes into that edge there. And as I say, this is continuous. This is G2 here, and so we don't need to go beyond this point. So I'll just put that on as a reminder. We just want to get to this point, and we could extend that. We'll extend that manually, and then trim it out to that edge and make sure it all aligns. That'd be one way, or we could just actually taper that down to coincide with that, which is probably going to be the better way to do it. So this bit in the middle, I'm just going to have to manually do it. This looks very sensible. It's sort of reasonably equally spaced. Well, I say it looks sensible, but actually when I look at it, it's starting to veer off that way. So rather than accepting what the system gives us, this one looks fine. I'm not saying that it always should be equally spaced either side, but it's just easier to work with in that case. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually get rid of this surface and manually rebuild it. So by doing, let's just query edit that. So I've got multiple surfaces on. If I put Bezier on, I get multiple surfaces there. It really doesn't matter too much. Put cursor on surface there, we'll get the cursor on surface there. We can just see the continuity, so that's fine. I'll leave that on for the time being. But there's cursor on surface there, which I will be getting rid of because I'm going to do this manually now. So I'm going to zoom into there, and we'll put a curve from that side and a curve on that side to create something manual here. So if I go into edit point from here to here, and I'm just dragging it to make sure. I don't know why I've used edit point, to be honest. Well, I wanted it to have some more CVs there. It really doesn't. I've put in 5. I don't actually need 5. I just make that 3, because the only thing that we care about here is it's obviously got to relate to this shape here, but it also needs to be tanned in. It needs to be G1 in terms of that curve into there. It doesn't affect the surfaces, so you might think, oh, it's got to be G2, but it doesn't have to be, not when it's an edge of a fillet. And so let's go into edit point. I want that to be 3 rather than 2, and then we'll pick that there. So I'm going to squash that up just so we can see that it's how it relates or not to this shape in here. I'm going to get rid of these surfaces here and do that, and all these curves and surface, and then we're going to align these curves in terms of tangency. That one there to there, and then we might also need to add, you know, a higher degree to get the shape that we want. I'm just looking at those arrows. There's one arrow that's good, that's picking up on the end. In fact, that looks pretty good. That shape there relative to that looks okay to me. Doesn't look too bad. Now we could say, well, we're either going to have to split this up here and here and here, or we could do something else. We put a curve across there, and I don't know how that would work. I think the easiest thing would be to split it up there. But rather than doing that, it's just much better just to put a surface in, even though these curves aren't sitting on those surfaces. If you actually were to measure them, you'd probably find that they're not that far out, I'm guessing. So if I measure that to this surface here, for example, it says it's 0.63, so it's some way out, but it's not very far. Now if I just get rid of that, I need to have a look at that. But it's just easier in this area like this, just put one surface in rather than multiple surfaces, and then we split it up. So let's just use square. I've got to decide which order I'm picking these in to get these continuities correct. So the first one's going to be G1, so I'm going to pick that one. Then I'm going to pick one of these edges, so G0, G1, G0, and then we'll make boundary 1 is going to be linear, boundary 3 is going to be collinear. And so I need to pick those in that order. So it's going to be that fillet, one of those curves, doesn't matter which way around you do it, that one and that one, and we get that. So continuity check. Those are tangency into there. I suppose we should really have curvature, to be honest. So let's do curvature, which may or may not align. You can see the trouble is with curvature, it starts to have a hiccup there. When we split it up, we can actually sort that out. So I'll go back to G1, if it'll let me, G1 on that end. I'll just leave that one as curvature, is sort of close enough. Having said that, I wasn't going to align those curves in curvature. Now let's get rid of those locators, because I'm now going to detach it. So this is all going to mess those up, and we'll detach it at these points here, and we need to put in some points, construction points here at the intersects. So we'll do that along that edge. Let me get rid of that curve because I don't want to keep picking that. I didn't want that point down there, and that one there, get rid of that. Those points there, and then we've just used detach. Oh, wrong function. Detach, and we're going to detach that square at that point, and then also this one, if it'll let me do that, like so, and then we can delete those points. And so we've got that in that view, and I should really, to be really safe, I should have set up a view at the start, because obviously I've just done this in this view, and we know that those edges won't lie absolutely on those surfaces at the minute. And if I rotate that around, so I've got that plane there saved, which gives me the view. If I rotate that around, you can see in a different view, of course it doesn't align, but if I go back to the view we were in, it does align, it does join up with those points. So important really that I created a plane to save the view. I'll get rid of that curve as well because that we don't need. And then we can start to align this properly. So I'm going to do an align G2 on this end. Like I've said before, it's not super critical if the ends of fillets don't quite achieve curvature alignment, but obviously it's nice if they do. And if that was throwing that shape a little bit, you know, I'd increase the degree along the fillet there so that it's more localized if necessary. And it wasn't in that case, but I've done it anyway. And that one into there. So that one, just throw it out a little bit. It throws out that third row a little bit. So I think what I'd do there is go into G1 instead. So it just does that. And then we can, well, if we put G2 on but use vector with Z on, then it'll just hold those in that place so that they're nice and neat and tidy. And then we'll do a project onto that surface there. So if it's breaking the curvature there by a tiny amount, 0.108, so another place where we'd increase the degree slightly. So I've made that 6, and then we can align that to this way. I've just realized I need to split this again across here, but I shall carry on anyway. So I'll carry on aligning where I can. And then this one, just make sure that that's, so I don't want project on, that's got to be edge. The same on here. Now I don't think project works into multiple surfaces, but I might be wrong. If I pick shift, I think I've tried this before, and yeah, it won't do it. I wish I had done that now. Revert. If it's edges, well, actually that's the way to do it, of course. Is so I've got two surfaces here that I want to align that to. I could just split it. That would be the simple thing to do. Or if I actually create this as a trimmed surface now, so if I go into surface edit and trim this, so I'm going to trim it in the Z direction there. So there's this bit that isn't trimmed, so I can, or isn't projected, hasn't got curve on surface. So I'll do that to that one. Again, on that one, I need to add that bit in. So this isn't actually aligned. Because this is aligned on all sides, I'm just wondering whether by default that might have already sort of aligned itself. It has. I didn't even need to do anything. It's almost magic, but it's not because it's because we've got a very short, small surface here. It's aligned in curvature there, and this is curvature aligned. It's sort of almost inevitable that could be curvature aligned. But if it wasn't, let me just save that again. If it wasn't aligned you can sometimes, it doesn't happen very often, but you can say align with edge on, and I can align that into multiple edges. So if I use shift and then, so I've still got the shift button down and then pick that as well, it will align it, or it'll try to align it. I'm not saying it will work every time. And obviously in this situation, I probably want vector and Z on, so it keeps the CVs the same, but you can do it on some multiple edges, but you have to hold the shift button down on the first edge, keep it held down, and then pick the second edge. So that's all worked out nicely. So the other thing that we want to do here, apart from that's not quite curvature aligned, I need to sort this out so that we end up at this point. Now, if I just extended that to there so that this overlapped and then trimmed it, we might get away with it. The problem will be is that if this edge is significantly, let me just explain what I'm talking about, just to make it clear. So let's do a markup. So what I'm saying is that if we were to extend this out this way, So we'd end up here, and then we come back down here, and we do that, going that way. We might get away with it. The problem is that if I just change the color there, the problem is that this edge here is not going to be lying on that surface exactly. So when you get to this point here, there might be a mismatch between this surface and this surface, and then we'd have to align that in some way. So the way we'd have to do that probably would be to do a trim convert from here. So we'd end up with a surface that was like that, trim converted to that edge, and then down there and across there. And then we'd actually have to do it across there, because then we'd have to align it in this direction, and it might lead to, it's probably likely to lead to, on this blue edge here, something of a wobble. I suspect there might be a rather wobbly edge to it. It's better if we avoid doing that altogether. So what I'm thinking is, if we get rid of all that lot, and actually just Control Z, just gets rid of it all. So rather than doing all of that lot, hello, where's my colours gone? Try that one. Oh, yeah. So rather than doing all that lot, I'm thinking if we zoom out a bit, it'd be easier, I think, if we just extended that line across there, and then just do a tapered. I'm going right back to here, because I think if I go from here, it's probably pointing in the wrong direction. Something tapered across there, that tapers down, so that we never have that issue of having to trim convert it and then trying to realign things. I mean, this edge on the right hand side, if it's G2 on the top edge on this edge here, and G2 on this bottom edge here, there's every chance that it'll be G2 into those surfaces, and if not, then we just end up splitting it a little bit, or maybe it'll just we'll be able to align into multiple edges. But I suspect we'll probably, even then, we'll probably have to split that up, so we'll probably end up with a little surface on the end there, maybe split that way as well. But it's quite a simple result. The only downside of this is, of course, the size of that fillet reduces, but it's in an area where everything's coming together anyway. So I think that's going to be the best solution there. So it's a little bit more manual work, and it's very common, you know, with when you've got these situations with fillets tapering out to nothing, then the fillet function does give you some. I mean, this result is absolutely perfect in itself, but it's just maybe not quite what we want, what we need. So I'm just going to go and put a curve on that edge there, extend that out, and then we can we need to then create a curve from here to here. So I'll use an edit point curve, and I'll make that degree 3, and then we go to the intersect there, and then we can I will try and align that in G2, not that it makes much difference really. It's just a question of whether the shape's what we want. So G2 is pulling that in a bit too far, I think. Let's make it G1, and I'll drop the degree to 2. So it's pretty close to that edge until we get to the area where the tangency is so low that it really is not going to make any difference. And then we'll do that. We'll do the same thing on this other side. Edit point curve from this point to, so it's somewhere along here. So I'm just looking at the spacing there, should be similar. And then we can change that anyway. So the wrong function. So I've created another curve by mistake. So I want to align that in tangency there. And we'll make that will make that degree 2 as well. So that point there, I just want to slide that up, this edge. somewhere like that. So it's sort of, it looks equally spaced, similar to the original fillets. Now we don't really need those. We don't need those fillets. Sometimes what you could do is extend those fillets and then trim and convert them. But I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible by building one surface again between all of that lot. So, or even though those curves aren't on the surface, well, having said that, of course, we could actually project those onto the surface, but it really doesn't make any difference, to be honest. It's just an extra step if we do that. So I'm just going to do a square between these edges here, and if I've done this accurately, then it should be able to pick up on that line there, that curve there, which it has done, which is good. Let's get rid of that. And now in my square function, because I've got history on, that's always useful. The fact that the curvature's failed there doesn't matter. We can fix that because we're going to put more degree in there inevitably, and etc. Now I just took whatever was in there, and unfortunately it was around the right way. Free boundary, strictly speaking, should be G0, but it really is not going to make any difference. So let's so now we've got, let's get rid of those curves. So we've just created a surface which is lying above these surfaces. It doesn't actually sit on them. So the first thing to do there would be to align in G2, project in the Z direction. I think we're probably still in that plane actually, but it doesn't really matter. So that's very nice, not. So it's not a very good result. Let's revert that. Okay, so let's do that into there. And so we need to increase the degree. So making it degree 6 has done the trick already. I'm going to make it degree 7 because I need to align it in curvature this way, or that's what I'm going to try and do. And so that works okay. Probably should have actually aligned it G2 first that way, because now I've gone off there. But let me just go and get rid of those curves on the surface and do that again. So let's align G2, project. Now it's a small amount of curvature mismatch there. Says the gap is 0.017, which is quite a lot. And but also I've got this curvature mismatch here, so I'm thinking that we need to detach this. This is going to be the quickest way to do this. So let's detach that, and I'll do it about halfway, and then we'll get rid of those. We'll get rid of the curves on surface again. Might as well do it that way. So first of all, I'm going to align this left-hand one, and hopefully this will now go in with less problem. So position inputs of 1 on. This is going to be projecting in the Z direction onto here. Great. And that one. That one. And then this locator here is measuring from this edge to this edge. It says 168 mil, so I know that's rubbish. And let's just go and evaluate that, see what that actually says. G2. Now, like I say, this is G2 in this end. This is G2 here. This is G2. So there's a possibility that what we've got in here will already align. What I've got to be careful of is that I've got a locator here which goes all the way up to the end there, because it's between that and the original surface. So I need to trim this out. So does that locator, see, it's kept that locator even though I've trimmed that. So I've got that locator is between a surface, that surface and that surface, which doesn't actually exist up here. So that locator is out of date. So if we want to see that, we've got to do it there, make sure it goes up to that point. Otherwise, when we look at the alignment here or not, then we're looking at something that's not quite up to date. This one here, we've still got curvature on. So I thought, maybe there's a chance that we'd have alignment automatically between the ends of this and this, because everything around it is curvature matched. But sadly, that's not the case. It says there's a gap of 0.02. So it looks like we have to do a little bit more work here. Now that surface there, I could trim that, but I will lose this corner because it actually goes all the way around there. So we need this bit of it, and we also need this bit of it. And so I'm going to trim that out. What I'm going to do is trim this out, so we'll end up with a surface in here and a surface in there, as separate surfaces. Then we'll have two edges, and we could try aligning that into the two edges and see what happens. Probably unlikely that that's going to actually align, so we'll end up splitting this up and maybe putting in another, detaching that surface again here. So on this one, actually, because we've got a gap there, and I suspect if we zoom in, yeah, you can see the gap is actually across that way. So it's not going to help. If I trim this surface back to this edge, that's not going to work, because then we'll end up with a step. We'll end up with this step between this surface and this one, and then we will never get these all to align properly. So it's a tiny little step, but it's enough to make it a problem. So I think rather than even bothering to try and align this in one go, I'm just going to extend this out, do that with it. I'll get rid of that locator because it's just going to be annoying. And then I'm going to split this up into two bits. I mean, I might as well, I suppose, just split the whole thing down the middle, to be honest. So if I go into Object Edit, Detach, and we'll detach it until we get to that end there. So I'll just use Control-Alt to go to that end, and it's picked up on that end successfully. Let's delete the locators because they're going to get confused around this area because I've just done a detach. And then this one we can do a trim convert on, a trim convert in the Z direction, that one. And then looks a bit odd. Oh, yeah, it looks a bit odd because I'm looking at the edge of this surface, of course, but the two don't have to coincide at all. There's no reason why they should. This one, we need to make sure that we go from this corner across to here. I think it's probably worth making sure that this is aligned first in all directions here. So let's do that first. So G2, that edge should be okay. That one will be out. No, okay. So I just trimmed it back, and it was obviously close enough. So maybe it wasn't necessary to split it up into two, but I'm not going to worry about that. But maybe we could have done it in one. So I'm putting a line across there. It's just a straight line, and I suppose it probably is a straight line that we need, but just to make absolutely certain, I would tan that back into there. It's probably unlikely to make any difference, to be honest, but so I'm just making sure that tans into there. And I noticed there was two arrows on there, so I just dragged that to the end, make absolutely certain it's in the right place, and then we can trim convert that top surface to that there. And this looks a bit confusing, I must admit, that because that surface, because of that edge there, we're looking at two edges there, and it looks like there's a big mismatch, and that's not the case. So let's evaluate this. We just need to be careful what we're picking. If I rotate that around, yeah, because they're all so close to each other, it's difficult to see, but that's what we're looking at there. And then this one we haven't got a curve on surface on, of course, so I need to put a curve on surface on there. So let's go into project. It's going to be curve on surface in the Z direction there into there using the surface. So I'll get rid of that curve just to avoid confusion, and hopefully we should find that's G2 already. So I didn't actually need to do anything. So I suspect that we could have done that in one surface if we'd really put some more effort into that. But so I'm now going to trim this back. Like I say, if I trim it to here, it's just going to pick up on it's only going to give me the one surface there. So and it's going to lose that little triangle. So let's do a trim into there. So I don't need any of that on, don't need project on. We've got all the cursor surfaces we need. So I need to go and say, click on that one, and then click on that one, and then we can keep those. So we should have two surfaces there. There's one, actually it's done it as one surface, and which is not really what we want, because that should be, it shouldn't really do that, because those curves on surface there are right on the edge there. So I'm going to undo that, because otherwise it's likely to cause a problem at some point. So what we'll have to do there is, let's go back into trim. I can trim that, and then if I say yeah, click on that one. Actually, I'm not sure whether this is going to do it even here. If I say divide, I suspect that this is still, oh no, it has done it. So we've now got two surfaces, but we've also got, have we? No, we haven't. No, I thought we might have a third surface, but we've actually got two. So we've got those two surfaces there. That's great. And then down here, we just need to, oh no, beg your pardon. No, sorry, we have got that one. So yeah, I thought we should have, I wasn't looking at it correctly. So when I do a divide, it's actually giving me not only the bits that I've asked for, which are those two bits, but it's giving me the other bit as well. And that bit I don't want. So I need to delete that. And then we should have just the two surfaces. Yeah. Right, that's better. And I think my display visible, I've got locators keep disappearing again. So that was the fix for that one. So let's go back into Evaluate, just check that all the way around there that we're okay. Yes, good. And then in here, we've got some other bits to trim out. So this one should trim out to here. Yes, yeah. Good. So that's that lot. And then we need this bit down here. So this is another one which goes off to 0 in terms of tangency. And so let's have a look. We don't want that. We're in this plane at the minute. I don't want that. So I'm going to go into toggle CP, back into the world space. Now this one, because it goes down to 0, you might be lucky and you might find that the fillet function will give you a decent result. So let's try that. Let's just make sure the normals are around the right way. So I go out of a non-proportional view usually for that. You can see that's going the wrong way, because it gets confused, I guess, because of the angle going down to 0. It's not quite sure which way to go, so I need to go that way. That's actually given us a really, really good result, even though it's gone down to 0. Sometimes it wanders off and does all sorts of crazy stuff at the end. And there is a new setting in here, which is what they call existing theoretical, which, let me try that. It really didn't give me much of a different result, but it's that should give you a better result, where you've got tangencies going down to 0. But the alternative is you just take the bits, sometimes if the end goes crazy, it's not what you want, then you just delete the end surfaces, and then you just do your own manually built end to that. But this is good. So the start point, we want edge align. This is really behaving itself, so it's actually looks like it's going to join up with that other fillet, whereas the one over there, for some reason, I think it's to do with the curvatures on the surfaces, was going a bit crazy. Actually, there's, while I just think of it, there is one thing, when it does that sort of stuff where it's going crazy, there may be a really good reason for it, and I ought to just check, and I'm looking at that, or to just check that there's nothing wrong with my surfaces, because I've made surfaces up which completely are different to what the fillet function gave us. And I should just check that we've got sensible looking curvature, and I don't need to put the curvature on to see that. I can just look at the CVs. So if we see the CVs, bearing in mind these are quite flat surfaces, so you should see the first 3 points more or less a straight line. First 3 points on that more or less a straight line. There's a slight curvature there because this has got curvature in that direction. That's absolutely fine. But they're not doing anything crazy where the, you know, this CV's up here or something. It looks absolutely perfectly okay there. But that's something that I should have checked because I manually built these. Right, let's go query edit back onto this. On that end, also we want edge align. There we go. Oh, everything's curvature aligned as well, which is amazing. And then we can do automatic on that now, and it's done that. So the only area that we need to check now is just this end here, which probably isn't curvature matched. Yeah, it's slightly out. Now I notice when I've done these fillets, and it's not a problem at all. I put multiple surfaces on Bezier. I didn't put Bezier on. It doesn't matter because, you know, that is a NURB surface. It's multi-spanned. It's got 8 spans in it. If you were really bothered about that, I mean, first of all, if we put the isopalm display on, you should hopefully see, let's take the CVs off. When you put that on, if you can count the number of spans we got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's a good sign. If you find that you count them and you think, well, there's only 5 there, that's a really bad sign. What it means is that it's put a load of spans on one end and you can't see them. They'll be right on top of each other, so that you won't actually see them. So if you can actually count them and you can see the spans are equally spaced there, then that's not a problem at all. That's fine. Or if that said, you know, 400 spans, that is a problem. You don't want that. But if you want to reduce the number of spans or number of surfaces, or you want to use single spans, then if you put Bezier on, now we end up with 2 surfaces where there was only one before, or it was one surface before but with 8 spans on it. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do, really, when it comes to fillets, I think, in terms of whether you have spans or not. You know, in some companies they insist that everything's got to be Bezier, that you can only have single spans even on fillets, which is you know, their choice. But if you've got a choice about it, then it's up to you which one you choose. While you've got history on, it doesn't actually make any difference anyway. If you've got multiple fillets on there, if you want to go and remove that fillet altogether, you can just do query edit on it and undo the whole lot, or change the parameters. It doesn't make any difference whether you've got multiple surfaces or and Bezier, or whether you've got you know, a single NURB surface. It doesn't make any difference. Right, let's go and check this one, and let's go into object edit, align G2 here. So there's a slight mismatch there, and so I've got project on, which is why it's throwing a giving us a silly result. So I want edge on, I want position of 1 on, so that the CVs join up, and because of the low degree we've got here, partly we're getting slight gaps there. So let's put the continuity on here. Why is that not actually coming up and showing me what the continuity is? I'll make those edges go that way as well. For some reason it's not showing me the not actually showing me the continuity check. Let's know why. Let's do that again. Oh, curvature. Oh, it's done it. So we've got a gap there. Let's just check that one. Now the gap's quite big, so I would suspect that we probably need to recreate the curves on surface. So I'm going to delete those curves on surface and then just align those with project on. So align project in the Z direction is as good as anywhere, but normal should probably do it as well. Align failed with error 3, projection failure. And the reason for this, so it's not to do with blend, because that's another error that we get sometimes. It's not to do with blend, it's to do with the fact that that edge can't project onto that surface. And sometimes it's because the end of the fillet or the surface that we're trying to project goes over the edge slightly. if we zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, it looks like that might be the case. But the other option, so it may be that choosing Z might be failing. If I choose normal, maybe it will work. If I got auto update on, there's something strange going on in this menu. Getting very confused there. So if that doesn't work, what I will do is just try and align this edge at least. That one's okay, that's fine. It's lost the curvature there again, which is annoying. So what we'd have to do there, because I can't see, there's no error there. I would first of all just check the underlying surface, that one there, but that's curvature aligned, which it is. And so there's no reason why this is causing us a problem. Even if I zoom that far in, I mean, when you start to zoom that far in, you're looking at stuff that is so small, it's neither here nor there. And that's not letting me pick the CV. Pick CV. Lets me pick that one. Lets me pick that one. So zooming in there. It can only be microscopic. So the other solution, if it thinks it's obviously the system thinks that's going over the end when it really isn't. Another possibility, I suppose, with projection is if I go project. So we'll do that with whatever the settings are, and it fails. Let's try view. That's another possibility. No, it doesn't want to know. So what we'll do there is we'll put a curve on surface there first, and then we'll have to align to it. So if I say project curves on surface, now this one, it doesn't mind if it goes over the edge. It's perfectly happy to do that. So we create a curve on surface, which we can see if we put the edit points on, you can see there's something there. And then I can go into align, and I have to align to an edge rather than using project. So you can see because I've got position influence of 1 on, this is dramatic. It's moved those points right along, which looks bad. Probably in terms of highlights you wouldn't see any difference, but it just looks bad in terms of CVs. So we want that back to 0, which is how we'd normally do it, edge to a trimmed edge anyway. And then we want to obviously get this curvature. Well, this is what I was trying to fix, was that curvature. So we're back to square one really, but that's fine. It's a very localized error there. So it's one where I'm thinking, let's just try moving a single point. We need loads of mouse sensitivity on at 5,000. Let's just try moving that point there. And I've obviously got the menu wrong here, so I'm picking up on multiple CVs. So let's just try moving that one, which is the one that's most obvious. I've just got to watch the bottom edge doesn't break when I do this. So it's moved it down there. I mean, you can, like I say, tangents is enough really on the ends of fillets. There we go. So that wasn't too difficult to fix. So let's trim this one. The one area we haven't checked is this, because obviously that's split into two. If we're lucky, this will be aligned already. Yes, without doing anything, just because this is aligned in all directions, everything around it is aligned. And it's another one where if it wasn't, then we could try aligning into multiple edges, or splitting it up like I did at the back there. So let me just save that. I always start these sessions thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put these details in, and then as I realise how much work there is involved in all of these bits, we don't end up quite doing that. I think there's some weird located stuff going on there, which is just nonsense by the looks of things. So the other edge is this one. Now this is another one that washes out, so we should go into our tangent continuity here, and I'll use, rather than auto scale, I'm going to use 20 again, it's my scale, and just go along these edges here and just see what that looks like. Just make sure there's nothing weird going on here. Now there's an area here. You think, oh, what's going on here? There's no tangency there. Is that going to 0? What's happening? It's because we haven't got position. So if I go and pick that locator, what we could do is go and pick all of those locators. So there's 3 of them there where there's big gaps. If we go into the information window, I can open up these, and we can what we can do is ignore the minimum gap. So we've got 0.001 there. If you look at actually what the gap is, it's 0.002. So I just ignored that. I thought it's so small that when we fill it, nobody will notice. It's not important. So what we can do is make this minimum gap 0.005, for example, and then it'll ignore the 0.002, and we'll just be looking at tangency. Now this is a bit long-winded. If I go through this menu, I'll have to open up each one of these, go into the display, not into the display, but go into this area. It's a bit long-winded. If you can remember to do it, if you pick that one and then go into the information window, and then you open that up, and you then set whatever that value is, 0.005 in my case, which I've already set, but I've reset it anyway. We don't want the display on for this. So now I've done that. So now if I go and pick the next one, you'll notice it's opened up in exactly the same way as the first one. So it's better to do that. Pick the first one, open it up in the information window as you want it to, and then you go and pick the other ones, and you'll find that all opened up in the same way. So it's just saves you a little bit of time. So if I make that 0.0, this one's actually a bigger gap, 0.008, so I need to make that 0.01, or I can make it 0.1, doesn't matter. It's just so that if that value is bigger than this, it will ignore the position error. That's all. This one's actually 0.01. Wow. So that's even bigger, but it's just so that I can see the angles. That's the important thing. It's showing me the tangency rather than there's an error with the position. So that looks all fine. There's a little bit of an error there, or not an error, but there's a little bit of an area around there where it sort of doesn't really look quite right. This looks really nice. The variation of tangency there, that doesn't look perfect, but I'm not going to bother about it. But it's something that you could fix. You could go back to these surfaces and just try and tweak those angles so that looks a bit smoother in terms of the tangency going through there, but I'm not going to worry about that. Right, so that looks okay. I mean, the important thing is it's going down to 0. It doesn't cross over or do anything really nasty like that, so that's good. So let's delete all those locators, and we'll get rid of all the CVs that we don't see, and then we'll do a similar thing around here where we'll bring the mesh in to give us a clue as to what size fillets we need. So let's put on our X there. Now this is a much tighter fillet. It looks to me as though it's probably about the same size as this other one. So let's just try something. And if you keep the history on, of course, you can mess around with it anyway. So I'm going to go and pick that one and that one. Normal's around the right way. I've left in 30, which is far too big. So let's make that 5. If nothing happens, then I also left the edge line on, which was silly, but hence it's taking a long time to think about this, because it's going to come up with some crazy fillets now, which go off to who knows where. I really wish I hadn't done that, and I wish it was possible just to crash that, but unfortunately it's not. So it's going to think about it now for 8 hours now. I think unfortunately this surface only goes up to here, and Edgerline is going to try and join this end up with whatever's up over here and whatever's down here. So it's got a large task on its hands now. So it's just a question of waiting, really. I mean, if you're really, if I just saved beforehand and it was taking this long, I would crash Alias and just open it up again. But because I'm not sure when I last saved, I'm pretty certain I got that other fillet. I don't think I've done anything else. So it's tempting to just to crash it and start it again. Just going to open up the model and see when we last saved it. It was 6 minutes ago. So I think there's every chance that I've got the other fillet in there, because this is taking, I mean, sometimes this happens and it takes 30 seconds, but this is taking a long time. So I think I'm going to just crash this. So I'm actually going to have to go into the task manager to do that by the looks of things. So if I right click on there and just say end task, it'll kill it. So I'm going to open that up again and just open that last file up. And yes, another reason why saving your files regularly is a good idea. And I'll just have to make sure that I didn't, that we've got that model in a good state. Yes, great. So we can see all the diagnostics. That's lovely. Right, let me just delete those locators. Right, let's go back into here. So all I did was analyze that edge, to be honest. I've got a couple of planes here. Be nice to get rid of. So they're cluttering up the place. Right, let's go into our correct layer, and we'll put the mesh back on, and we'll put some sections on, just to compare. So this time I'll try and remember before I start to turn that to default, and then we want this to G2, chordal length, I say 5 mil, and we set form factor of 1, and so go to default, continuity check, and then we'll go and pick that surface versus that surface. It's better. Right, so that's too small. So we'll make that, say, 10 mil, maybe 15. I'm just comparing it to the data. Let's go for 12 mil. Perfect. Right. So that one works perfectly well, which is what I would expect, because there's a good angle between the two surfaces. That one, now I've got history on, so if I do this and I just go and put these in between these two surfaces here, the fact that it doesn't actually join up to the ends doesn't actually matter, because I can get an idea now. I can go back and fix that, just because I've got history on. It's very handy. And this one's going to wash out to 0, so will this behave itself? I don't know. It might wander off. See, this, oh, right, so that's another thing that happens, is sometimes it doesn't quite reach the end because it's run at it, because the tangent goes down to 0. It thinks, well, there's no mismatch here, so it can't need a fillet. And this is hopefully where this existing theoretical will come in. Great. To be honest, I've not used existing theoretical very much. It's a new thing. I think it came in 2024. That seems to work well. So that's good. And the only thing there is that I might need to then trim it different, or convert it differently at the end when we come to look at this, but probably not, actually. It looks perfectly fine. It looks good. So we can go back to these areas. Now this area here, I wouldn't want to use edge align on it. It would be too extreme. I mean, we can see what happens if I do it. It's because I've got history on. I can do a query edit on it. So if I try edge align, nothing happens. I was thinking about it. Oh dear. Oh, it just gave up. I'll tell you what we'll do, because that looks a bit worrying. Maybe I just didn't quite pick the button, or picked it twice or something. It went back to default. So if I go start here, edge align, there we go. So I'm not looking at the curvature. It's just the shape of this looks a little bit extreme. So I would keep that at default, and then I would just put in an extra fillet in here. So I just put one between that surface there, and I'll pick that surface there. and do that with it. Now you find this is another one where it's not quite joining up, and for whatever reason it's just working it out slightly differently. The other possibility is if we just undo all. So this is the other great thing about history here, is you can just say undo all rather than having to go around deleting everything. What I could try is next pick those two together rather than just one at a time, and let's see if that joins up. Seems to join up there. I mean, when we look at it exactly, it might not join up exactly. That one didn't quite join up, but it's close enough. I mean, you might find that, you know, picking even more surfaces, maybe that would sort this out. But that one's sort of close enough, makes me think that that might work. No, I'm going to undo that. I'm just going to pick this one as well and undo that one, actually. And so we'll go next. We'll just pick all of these together and see what happens. Maybe that'll be fine. So looking at that end, that's okay. Internally, I'd expect that all to join up. Yeah, that's better. That one doesn't join up quite. It's not normally a problem. I think there's something about these surfaces it doesn't really like for some reason. I'm going to undo all of that lot. I'm going to query edit that and undo that lot and just pick all of this lot in one go. Maybe I might as well pick these as well while I'm at it and see whether that's going to give us a good result. Help if I was still in the function, of course. So I've got default on. Gives it a bit more to think about. Hopefully not too much to think about. Right, that's worked down here, because you can see this is starting to go off, and it's because this angle here goes down to 0. So half expecting that. This is the other thing that you get when you pick a load of surfaces together. You get a lot of extra surfaces. You think that's surely not necessary, and we know that's not necessary because I did that before as a separate operation, and it's also screwing up here. So I think by picking too many surfaces together, it's actually not so good. I think I got away with that lot. So default and default. Yeah, that's much better. It's just giving us one surface there, not quite aligned, but very, very close. So I'm going to do that. This one, I'm going to do those two together with default and default on. So that's given us a much more sensible result, a lower number of surfaces there. And then we'll do that one as a separate one. Now this end one, I'm going to use that, see what that does, but you can see it starts to go off. It's actually breaking up completely here, and it doesn't surprise me. It's because that tangent goes down to 0. So let's just try this existing theoretical. Fantastic. I didn't expect it to be that good, but that's actually really good. On this end, we can make that edge line now, and this one it doesn't quite join up, but we'll have to get around that. I think because it's this end here, because it's washing out to nothing, I'd be inclined to align that to the right hand side. Now, unfortunately, in a way, I've got automatic on, but I can take that off because I've got that capability with the history on. So when you're working on fillets, it's so good having this history. If I squash that up, and then we can just align that from here to the right hand side. So I'm going to align that. I'll do G2. It'll be with some blending on. So it's going to break the history now, of course. But you know, while you can keep the history on fillets, it's really, really good. And then blending, I'll just pick those 2 points up so we get a decent result there. And then while we're in here, we might as well align that to here. So I'll take the history off this time and not do that. So it's because I've got project on and I've got the Y direction on. So put the Z direction on, and then that one into that surface there. Now the mistake I've made there is I've got blend on, which I've forgotten to take off. So that now works fine. Into this end, because everything's aligned around it. Hopefully, if we're lucky, yeah, we are lucky. That's great. So we've got that continuity there. I should just check the continuity along here. So there's a position mismatch here as well. Now if I zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, that position mismatch isn't actually up and down, it's just left to right. So we might be able to just fix that, but it does mean that our curves on surfaces there don't join up. So if I was to try and do a trim there, yeah, you can see a pink spot there. It's because of that gap there. So what we've got to do is we've got to decide which one we're going to fix. So let's delete the curve on surface there, align that right hand one to the left hand one, and I'm just going to do it in position and see if we can get away with this. Don't want projectile, it's got to be edge, it's got to be 1, and then we just change the continuity check to G2. Wow, that was exactly what I wanted. It was already automatically G2 because it was so close, and then we can align that in G2 hopefully, either Z and project on up to there. So we should now have a trim edge there. Let's go into here, have a look at the continuity there. I'm going to save this because we've done a bit of work on this. And again on this one looks mismatched. So we've got to decide which way around that one should be. I think we'll go for the left-hand one. Now this is trimmed out, so I need to untrim that. And then we'll get rid of that curve on surface because we're going to have to change the end there. Get rid of that curve on surface as well because we're going to have to align that. So do G2 edge, that one into there, position influence of 1, and then we'll project that onto that surface there, and project that onto that surface there. Fantastic, so that's all aligned. And then we're going to have a look at these ones here, continuity wise. That is a gap there. And there's also a gap there, or curvature continuity problem there. There's a gap on that one as well. So let's have a look at this one. Yeah, it is curvature continuity there, that's the problem. So we'll align that one, G2 edge, that one into there. So of course we're breaking the history. That one, let's delete the curve on surface on the top edge there. This bottom one's got trimmed out, so we want to untrim it, and I'll delete that curve on surface. And then we'll just try and align that on both ends, and then we'll do a project into the parent surfaces there. So that's position influence of 1, that one into there. Project that in the Z direction onto this surface here, and that one onto there. That's broken the curvature there. Let's see if we can get away with just a higher degree. That doesn't quite work. We may be just wonderful. Because I increased the degree there, that solved that problem really. This one, there is a gap on that edge there, so we'll need to get rid of, need to decide which one we're going to go for. So let's delete that one. It's a small gap, so maybe we'll be lucky if we just do a position alignment right to left. So I'm aligning the right hand one to the left hand one with 1 on there, and let's have a look at the curvature. So I wasn't sure that that was going to work, to be honest. So we've got this on here. Let's make it curvature aligned. Let's increase the degree just so it's a bit more localized, and see if we can get away with this bottom edge. We can't. So this one's again got trimmed out, so we have to untrim it. Delete that curve on surface. Let's just make sure this is aligned first, because there's no point in fixing the middle one on one end and not the other. So that's not quite aligned there. So another one where we need to delete that curve on surface, Not sure whether there is a curve on surface there. No, there isn't. So let's align that on the end. That one to there. And then we do a project of that into that surface there. In the Z direction, that one into that surface there. It's broken it there, sadly. And let's have a look and see what that looks like. It's actually quite a bit, and it goes all the way down to the end as well, which is a bit of a shame. But the solution there may be that you can see this comes off at an angle. I think I've got a squashed up view here. It comes off at quite an angle to this edge here, and if we actually did a trim convert across here, we'd stand a better chance of getting that curvature aligned, I think. Does mean a little bit more fixing here, so we'll get rid of both of those curves on surface there. I'm going to save this. There. And then if we put a curve on this edge here, duplicating that curve, which I've just made a mistake on, and I've got interactive on, so I want to take interactive off, otherwise it creates a curve that isn't quite on the end, which is just going to lead to even more problems, which we don't want. And then we just extrapolate or extend that way, and we extend that way, ignoring this gap of 11 mil, because that'll all disappear once we do a trim convert anyway. It creates a new, because it creates a new surface, the diagnostics will disappear because it doesn't know about them. Like so. So let's just go around these surfaces and just check the continuity here. So we've got, hopefully, there's no curve on surface on the top edge yet. We know that. Just double check that that one's okay and this end is okay. So let's get rid of the curve so it doesn't get in the way. And then we just want to align these. So let's align the left-hand one first of all using project into this surface here. Oh, it's broken the position there. So there's obviously a little bit of a mismatch there, which I've only just discovered because of that, aligning that and projecting it. That's an odd one, because when you look at that, you know, that surface must have overlapped the edge there, and it didn't complain about it. Whereas before, when we couldn't even see the gap, it complained about it. So there's not always a logic, or not one that's obvious to some of the errors you get. So that's aligned there, and then we'll do the project onto this surface here. So that's all great. So it's just this one. So let's get rid of that curve on surface there. So I need to align the left-hand one to the right-hand one. It is a very small gap, so maybe we'll get away with that. But I'm going to just use G2, straight into G2. And then hopefully project will work onto here, that it won't object to this. Right, it's broken the curvature slightly, but right in the middle. And I suspect that we hopefully can fix that with a bit of a manual tweak to that. So I've got loads of mouse sensitivity on, and you saw that go green then, so that's a good sign. Great. I'm definitely going to save that once more. So I think we've just got the end to fix, and then it's a question of just trimming everything out. So on this end here, well, we'll start trimming things. This one, this surface here is already trimmed. This surface does that at the minute. And this is where I think we might have to do a little bit of a change. So this is what the fillet function gave us, which is a fantastic result, but it doesn't quite line up with this end. So what I'm going to do there is just duplicate that end as a curve and then extend that up this way. And then we'll extend the end of this fillet out. And then we're going to just trim convert that, project on in Z into there, and get rid of that curve because it'll just get in the way. So what we've got to do here is we've got that and we've got that surface. And let me take these sections off because they're really difficult to, they're not helping see what's going on here. So we've got all of these curves and surfaces there. So if I do try and do a trim, you can see it, we've got all of these that we need here. We just need one on the end here. I would be inclined to untrim the whole thing so we can see exactly what's going on, because we've got this curve on surface here actually, which we can just extend to where we need it to be. So it only goes there at the minute. If these curves and surfaces extend beyond where they need to be, if you do that, we can perfectly trim that back. But you notice that there's this curve on surface comes up to this point. This is why I untrimmed everything, because I want to get rid of that one. It might cause a problem when we come to trim it. It might be very small, but it might cause a problem. Now we've got curve on surface there. Let's just check the evaluation in terms of G2. Brilliant. Didn't need to do anything on that. So I should now be able to trim that back out again. So sometimes it's worth untrimming, get rid of any curves on surface that might cause a problem, and then just fix that. So we can now, I'm just using the hotkey T to trim things out. So hopefully, if I've done this right, then things will trim out. Yeah. Let's take our, let's get rid of all of the locators and have a look at that. So we should have now our fillet going all the way around there, from nothing to something to nothing on both of those sharp edges. Right, I'm just going to save that. I know I should give it a new name each time, but I just took the risk that we're okay